Hey, everybody. So nobody showed up for the meeting tonight. It is currently Thursday the 3rd, so July 4th tomorrow. Woohoo. And I just figured I'd pop on and I have not had a chance to talk a whole lot lately about eating well. And I think it's very relevant, to pay attention to sort of what you take into your body in every way, because it does affect your safety. It affects your ability to focus. It affects your strength, your flexibility, and all that stuff, sort of your energy level. And I will share what I've learned that, some of these things might be like, duh, I already knew that. And then it's a reminder, to keep eating well or even better. But maybe some of these things are new. Well, one of the books that I'm going to recommend that everybody read, um, it's not like required or anything, but if like you say, if you're all in, right, you want to be a better skydiver in every possible way, all metrics. This book is a good one. It's called Healthy at 100. The author's name is Robbins. I think I want to say it's Tom Robbins, but I could be wrong. But one of the things that he has been doing for a lot of years is looking into populations, subgroups that live longer, right? Where they have a highest possible percentage, compared to the rest of the world of, centenarians or whatever you call people over 100. And so you could certainly say, well, yeah, but what about genetics? Sure. However, some of these studies, like the comparing the Okinawans, right, people living on the island of Okinawa, there's the elder Okinawans who are rocking it. They're living really, really long lives, well over 100, and not just surviving on, life support, but really, living well, compared to the younger ones, right, which removes genetics. And if you look at, those two different groups, it is a massive difference. I mean, like the grandparents or great grandparents in some cases are burying their grandchildren and great grandchildren. So it's not only about genetics. Obviously, it's relevant. So one of the things that he looked at is how much meat do they eat, I think, starting there. And that was a significant difference compared to the rest of the world. All of these different groups, they're the Hunsans, the Villacombrans, the Elder Okinawans, they all, sort of don't eat a tremendous amount of meat at all. And the meat that they eat is, not farm raised. It's happy, animals that are living well and eating well, and having a good life. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it doesn't mean they're all vegetarians. So, on Okinawa, they eat a lot of fish, right? A lot of sushi and things like that. So that's worth paying attention to, because we do know that fish oil is something that matters. And I think it should be, if you can take fish oil pills, at the very least, it's going to make a difference. I've been working hard to make sure all my blood levels are healthy since the heart attack. It's amazing how being, shocked into these things can really get you to pay attention to how you live and how you eat. So yeah, it's actually quite important to get good fish and oily fish in your diet. Right? So that and staying away from the farm raised beef in particular, pigs, stuff like that. Um, I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're not right or wrong as a human being. It's not, I don't think it comes down to a moral issue as much as it does, you are what you eat. And so consider, the experiences of that animal affecting how it impacts your life. So why not try it, right? So, bail on the farm raised beef. If you're going to do any of that stuff, just try only grass-fed and just see how you feel, give it a week or two. Switching to salmon or something like that if you feel like you need enough protein. Because obviously going full vegan makes it really hard to get all the different categories of amino acids going. So I think that's a good one. Another one is lignans. All of these populations seem to consume a high volume of lignans, and it has several different benefits that enhance longevity, or at least correlate with that, right? So it doesn't cause early death because obviously these people are living a long time. Is it a correlation that just sort of shows up, in parallel with a good lifestyle that leads to a long life? Maybe it's possible. Um, but it certainly doesn't hurt. So, like for instance, ground flax seeds, right? Fresh ones, you want to keep these things in the fridge if possible, but yeah, freshly ground, right? So if you're going to grind it ahead of time, definitely stick that in the fridge, but it's far better from what I understand, to keep the shell intact until you're trying to, access what's in there. I have a coffee grinder for that purpose. I don't grind my coffee. I use, organic, freeze-dried coffee, and that, it's quicker, it's easier, and it's organic. I like the Anthony's, that you can get online. I don't drink a lot of coffee though, and I don't drink it past about noon usually. And if I do, I find I can't sleep. I don't know if that's you or not. Um, and it dehydrates you. So look into lignans, learn more about it, research it. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm just sharing what I've learned, right? Um, so with regards to caffeinated stuff, and sugars, it actually doesn't help you stay hydrated very well, right? It's diuretic, and you end up, if you're drinking coffee or soda or something like that on the drop zone, it's going to affect your performance little by little. You're going to find yourself not who you were in the morning. You know, it's one of the things that I've noticed in skydiving a lot after a bunch of jumps, 5, 6, now 7 jumps in the day, muscle spasms. I don't know if any of you guys have experienced that, where like you reach up for the steering toggles and your biceps lock and you can't reach up anymore. I've experienced that for 30 years periodically, and primarily when I'm not drinking enough water and when I'm drinking things that do the opposite of what the water is potentially doing. So just consider, to go away from anything but what your body's actually asking for when you're thirsty. With that in mind, um, it's interesting to note that bioavailability of the nutrition, right? So if you eat fresh foods, that's one of the correlations. Fresh living food that was just recently engaged in photosynthesis. It wasn't, chopped off of the plant, put on a boat from Chile, and then you get it 2 or 3 weeks later and they artificially make the color look right and whatever, and you think you're buying good veggies, and actually maybe not, right? Just because it is a vegetable doesn't mean it's high in nutritional value, or as we say, nutritional density. So something to think about there as well, right? So this is why I grow vegetables, right? And it's for several different reasons, but the primary one is I want highly valuable food. And so I start with the soil, and I try to nutrify the soil and give it its 130 or so different living things that it needs in the soil for healthy plants. And the worm compost is part of that. But I do my best. I mean, it's a learning curve in itself, learning how to grow fresh veggies. But maybe you know somebody who grows stuff, or you have a farmer in your local community, um, that grows stuff in a healthy way. But bioavailability is, um, I think it's something to also continue researching what that actually means. So your ability to process the food. So let's say if you're in a high state of stress while you're eating, you're rushing and you're just trying to get through the meal because your body's physically hungry, you want to fill the space, but you're not taking the time to really get into the receiving mode of your food. So slow down when you eat. Slow down and take the time even before you eat it. Just take a moment and just look at the food and think about the different components. Where did it come from? To say thank you to those chickens that laid those eggs, or thank you to those plants that are now literally going to become you, right? They're integrated into your systems, and you're going to be wearing that for quite a while. That's your structure. That's where it comes from. And so I find a way to have a contemplative approach to my eating, And that's one of the things that also is a consistent trend with these different cultures. If they don't just scarf down their food, and not focused on taste as the priority, it's because you're thinking about what's in it. What's it going to do to you? What does each component offer? And I think being in a state of appreciation really opens us up. It's like readying the body. I'm sending you some food and I'm going to receive it in every possible way that I can so that I can be, sort of in in a receptive state of mind and body as I'm eating. And just see how you feel. All right. You try these things, you go, well, could it hurt? Not really. There's no downside to taking a moment. And whether you call that blessing your food or you just calling that taking a little time, it doesn't seem to matter. But in a lot of these cultures, that's part of the ritual of eating. It's more than just scarfing. So look into that. And the the quality of your food is something that you may not be able to choose when you're flying coast to coast on an airplane and they're giving you crackers or whatever. Like, okay, I'm just going to get through the day. I don't want a grumbly, loud stomach when I'm on an airplane and people are looking at me. That's fine. But consider that under those circumstances, when you're in some sort of a food desert, to drink more water so you're not as hungry and then you don't binge on garbage food. The other one that you may probably already know is that when you send raw sugar into your body, it causes the insulin to spike. And then the insulin does its job too well and it crashes you, right? You lose energy, you lose the duration of that energy because it's a brief moment, it's a flash in the pan, like burning leaves instead of logs. And one of the things that we're also seeing is that in these cultures, they don't have raw sugars. They don't have simple carbohydrates as part of their diet. They just don't do it. And we also know that when you increase the amount of fat, which has been vilified, if you happen to have sugars, let's say Ben and Jerry's as compared to straight candy, or sugar drinks, right? It goes straight into your body, or juices go straight into your bloodstream as a spike in the glucose, and then your body endures stress. It experiences inflammation, which is the cause of us, degrading and getting old. Ultimately, all the sickness stuff that we deal with is part of a weakened immune system, a weakened energy system, and as a result, there's natural consequences to that way of eating and living. So if you're going to have something sweet, make sure there's, some kind of fat involved. Don't be afraid of fat. Your brain is basically more than 80% of your brain is cholesterol, something that's been vilified. Fat and cholesterol is like, that's bad, that's heart disease. Well, there's more to the story than just that. And yes, you can select your fats more carefully. Things like avocados are going to give you healthier fat, as we say. Some suggest that even, that grass-fed beef fat is better. I'm not really sure. Like I say, it's not my area of expertise. I'm just passing on information that I've heard from good sources, right? People that really know stuff more than me. They research further into it because that's their job. That's their education, that kind of thing. So just a few thoughts. There's more, but if you sort of go with those simple guidelines and try to eat more vegetables than you used to, healthy, good ones, fresh ones in the summertime, yeah, you can, eat raw stuff. Absolutely, as much as you possibly can. And as I've discussed before, I'm sure many times on the network, I'm a fan not of juicing, but of blending. If you throw the veggies in a blender and, basically fracture the cell wall, your body can access it. And again, that's that bioavailability thing, right? So you can actually get to it and just, you take vitamins, for instance, that's not very bioavailable. If you're actively engaged in, processing food at the time you're digesting, Well, some of that will get into your body. But if you take vitamins on an empty stomach, that's just expensive pee. So don't bother, make sure you're eating at the time. But the percent of the vitamin C or something that you take in that tablet compared to, getting vitamin C from a plant, bioavailability, big difference, big difference, more profound than we thought. So I just, I care about you guys. I care whether you live or die, but I care if you live well or just get by, right? Aim high, aim high so that your energy level is as high as possible. And the way that you're living is with the deliberate intent of not just surviving, but thriving.